guys, so today I am here with the first part of my September book haul, and I've decided to switch it around this month. So the first book haul I'm doing this month is the books that I have bought new and been sent for review by publishers, and my library and second-hand book haul will be part 2 later on in the month. I'm doing it this way around because you might have remembered in last month's new and review book haul, I didn't actually have any new books. I hadn't bought myself any books new, but I then went to Edinburgh and my friend Jill and I went to a lot of bookshops and I bought a lot of books there. And I've also been sent lots of books for review, so I already have lots of books that would make up this book haul, and for that reason we've turned it round this month. Before we get into the books, however, I would like to give a shout out to the sponsor of today's video, which is Skillshare, who have sponsored some of my content in the past. I'm always incredibly grateful for their continued support because it really aids me in making content for you guys. But if you're not familiar, Skillshare is an online learning platform with hundreds of thousands of classes to teach you any skill that you could virtually want to learn. One of the lessons I've been particularly enjoying recently is one of their originals series, which are specially commissioned by them, and this one is taught by Kirsten White, who is, I'm sure you're all aware, quite a well-known author, and she has a class up on Skillshare which is all about retelling your favourite stories. And if you're not aware, I love to write fiction and I particularly love to retell Greek myths. It's not something that I share a lot of, but it's something that I enjoy doing and enjoy honing my skill in because it's something I would like to publish in the future, whether it be short stories retelling myths or entire novels retelling myths, and I'm constantly working on different things and experimenting with different myths in different styles. If you are interested in learning more about different authors' writing processes, or really, again, like I said, many other skills all the way from like knitting to cooking, then I will have a link down below in the description box which will give them a free 2-month trial of Skillshare, so you can have their premium membership without paying for a short period and give it a little test, try out some of the videos that are available on there. And if you do find yourself interested in continuing with the Skillshare subscription, then it actually comes to less than $10 a month if you subscribe annually. So there's a lot of fun stuff on there if you're looking to develop a skill that you've already been practicing or learning something completely new. But now let's get into the books I have to show you. First up are the books I bought myself, and the one on the top of my pile was actually in my reviews for the second half of August, and that is This Is Not a Drill, an Extinction Rebellion Handbook. This is a collection of essays. They're not all essays, they're just like small non-fiction pieces on the Extinction Rebellion movement and climate change. So it's split into 2 sections, one of which is kind of the effect that climate change is quite literally having on our planet right now, some of the science behind it, some of the future possibilities about it, and how people are coping and dealing with it and coming to terms with it. And then the second half is practical tips for involving yourself in the Extinction Rebellion movement and, you know, activism in terms of climate change. Now, I think this is a fantastic book. It's not a perfect book, but I think it's a fantastic must-read book that everyone should really pick up, and if you want to know more of my thoughts on it, you can see that video, and I also plan on doing a full video all about it. I'll also link some information about Extinction Rebellion down below. I originally thought they were a UK only organisation, but they're actually currently working across the world, and it's something that I would highly recommend you to get involved in. But that was one of 3 books I picked up in the Portobello Bookshop, which is a new independent bookshop that's opened in Edinburgh in the Portobello area, which is at the seaside, and I love this bookshop. This is one of my new favourite indie bookshops. If you're ever in Edinburgh, please do check it out because it's just fantastic, and I picked up 2 other books whilst I was there. The other one I also reviewed in my end of month wrap up, so I'll be brief, but that is When I Arrived at the Castle by Emily Carroll. This is a horror fairy tale. Yeah, a gruesome fairy tale horror graphic novel comic book in Emily Carroll's quintessential style, really. I read this, really enjoyed it. And then I also picked up Wild Magic by Tamora Pierce. This is an author who I constantly get recommended. I try and read a lot of fantasy written by women, and I'm constantly looking up some of the best classic and like more modern fantasy written by women, and this author is one that just comes up time and time again on lists and is recommended me specifically by you. So I decided to finally pick up one of her books, and this was the series they had in that bookshop where they had books 1, 2 and 3, so I decided to just go for it, pick up book 1 because it sounded intriguing. It says Dane has been alone in the wild for a long time, a little feral and running from a tragedy that drove her from her home. Dane's strange affinity with animals has kept her alive. This knack leads Dane into service with the Queen's Riders. When she meets Anna Chamtoing at market, finally it seems as though she is leaving a life of uncertainty and danger behind. But their journey to deliver horses back to the capital is interrupted when nightmarish creatures drop from the sky chasing a hawk. They herald the start of a new life for Dane, one filled with adventure, romance, war, and more magic than she could have ever imagined. Magic, romance, affinity with nature and talking to creatures, all of this sounds right up my street, and I'm really excited to finally be checking out this author. I then did pick up some other books when I was with Jill, and the first one I picked up in a buy one get one half price deal in Waterstones, and Jill got the other book that was buy one get one half price. We often do that, we split the deals in the bookshops, and that is All the Bad Apples by Moira Fowley Doyle. This is another author I'm constantly hearing raved about. A lot of her books seem to be magical realism with queer elements. They come under the YA demographic, and yeah, I just hear such high praise for them. This one says, our family tree is full of bad apples, you know the kind, the ones who don't follow the rules, the ones who dress differently, think differently, love differently. The curse of the bad apples has claimed my sister, and now it's coming for me. A powerful, haunting and unforgettable story about women finding their voices from critically acclaimed and best-selling author of the Accident season. I honestly picked this up on the basis of the author, what I've heard about her, and the stunning cover. It sounds like it's going to have kind of awesome like female empowering elements to it as well, and yeah, I'm just really intrigued to check out this author. Plus, again, look at that cover. Then in Blackwell's, where I had saved up £5 worth of points on my Blackwell's cards, which is always a treat, I picked up 2 books. So the first one is The House of Shattered Wings by Aliette de Bedard. I have read another book by Aliette de Bedard. It was like a novella, and I loved it. So I've been meaning to check out more by her, and I thought it would be fun to read one of her full-length novels. But the reason I particularly picked this up is because I requested the third one for review from the publisher, not realising it was the third in a series. So the third book in the series just came out. I requested a copy because I saw the name Aliette de Bedard and thought, yes, novel by this author, want to read. Then got it in the post and realised I hadn't read the 2 previous books, so I thought the best thing to do would be buy the first book. And that is what I did. This is set in a kind of magical alternative Paris, where there are different groups of magicians who are warring amongst each other for kind of power over magical Paris. That's about all I know. I just know that, again, I actually already like this author's writing, and I love, you know, me some fantasy, so it would be fun to try a full-length fantasy book by her. And then I have a book I've picked up time and time again in bookshops and always meant to buy and just never got around to, and finally decided to treat myself, and that's The Thinking Woman's Guide to Real Magic by Emily Croy Barker. That's another cover that just draws me in. I immediately pick this up in bookshops and think, oh yes, this looks fantastic, and I finally got it. It seems like a blend of contemporary women's fiction, romance and fantasy. It's about a woman called Nora whose life has not quite gone to plan. She's got a failing academic career, she's single unwantedly, she has a mouse in her kitchen, you know, everyday problems that a lot of us can relate to, and then she gets drawn into a magical other world whilst attending her friend's wedding, and I thought, hey, who doesn't want that? In fact, maybe I should read this ahead of my friend's wedding, which is later this month, and I'm a bridesmaid at. Maybe I can look out for some magical portals. And then last but certainly not least for books that I bought myself is The Lost Queen by Signe Pike. This is another book that's been on my wish list for the longest time, but it's not cheap, and I've never seen it for less than like £10, even for the paperback. So I've kind of been stalling, and then I was ill all weekend and decided I'm buying myself a book on the internet because I am ill and I feel sorry for myself, and finally decided to buy this even though it was £11, which seemed a little bit expensive. I think it's because it's not published in the UK. But in saying that, it's set in the UK, it's set in ancient Scotland, which, yes, I am so here for that setting. I say ancient, it's actually set in 6th century Scotland, which is a time period in which there's much debate about whether that would be considered ancient or not. but I'm not going to get into that. Anyway, it doesn't matter for the sake of this argument. It's ancient Scotland, and it's about a young woman who wishes to protect the old, druidic, religious, magical ways of her people, despite the fact that she's been betrothed to a Christian prince, and it's about her adventure. And yeah, it also has a recommendation from Kirsty Logan on the front, which I hadn't realised before I bought it, but I really like Kirsty's writing. She's described it as Outlander meets Camelot, a sweeping magical tale, so can't wait to read this one finally. And then we move on to the books I've been sent for review. So first up on my pile is Great Goddesses, Life Lessons from Myths and Monsters by Nikita Gill. This is a poetry collection, a stunning one at that. Gorgeous. Don't see a lot of like pure white books. And then this lovely bronze foiling, which I can already pick out a few myths on. We've got Medusa up here in the corner. But previously Nikita Gill has published a poetry collection with sort of fairy tale elements, and this one is a poetry collection that you can guess from title is based on Greek mythology. So I thought that would be really intriguing. It also has gorgeous illustrations. Yes, so here for this. I've met Nikita Gill at a literary festival before where I chaired a panel she was on, and she was such an interesting intellectual woman that I'm really excited to have her take on the Greek myths and what she feels they can mean for modern women, so really excited about this one. I then have The Burning Glass, The Life of Naomi Mitchison by Jenny Calder. Naomi Mitchison was a Scottish author in the sort of early 1900s. She was married to a politician, I believe, and was an activist in her own right. Yes, I think this quote sums it up in the back really. She was born to privilege, but she was nonetheless a committed socialist and feminist and worked all her life to give voice to the voiceless. Mitchison was not afraid either to challenge convention or to use her social position to overcome obstacles and get things done. She is just generally someone that I think is incredibly fascinating. I have been meaning to read her fiction for a long time. I have, touched on it here and there. She was one of my dad's favourite authors, and I would just really like to know more about her because she's somebody I don't think we know that much about in the popular culture. When it comes to sort of women in history and women in politics and feminism and women's rights and socialism, we hear the same names over and over again. Like, the only person that ever made a difference to women's lives was Emmeline Pankhurst, which, don't get me started on Emmeline Pankhurst. But I just think it would be nice to kind of get to know a little bit more about a woman who was politically active as well as a fiction author and her life and everything she did. So I'm excited to read this one. I was then sent a review copy of The Kingdom by Jess Rothenberg. Now, this is a book I have seen all over, like, American booktube. Like in the US, a lot of people have been hauling this book as a very different cover, so initially I didn't realise it was the same book, and then I saw that it had come out in the UK with Pan Macmillan and had to have a copy because it sounds so fascinating. This is set in a futuristic theme park where the princesses are actually kind of androids or cyborgs. They're not fully human. I'm not sure if they're fully machine either, though. I don't know where the technology is at in this world, but you get my meaning. They have been specifically created to serve as the princesses in this theme park to entertain the guests, and they live there, they exist to be there. And it's about one of those android princesses who starts to question this role and the way she's being treated, and she has her own personality and her own wants and her own desires, and I think in a way it's a metaphor for women's experiences of modern society, just in this really interesting futuristic science fiction with a twist of magic setting. So I'm really interested in this one. It reminds me a little bit of Louise O'Neill's Only Ever Yours. I mean, the concept's very different, but it just sounds similar in tone, and I really enjoyed that book. I thought it was very powerful, so I'm hoping this one will be as well. I was then sent 3 books by Penguin Classics, which are just another set of stunning editions. These are new editions that Penguin have brought out that are translations of Tove Ditlevson's trilogy of biographies. So book 1 is childhood, surprising. Book 2 is youth, and then book 3 is dependency. And these are the Copenhagen Trilogy. So the author of these lived between 1917 and 1978. She grew up and lived in Copenhagen. She was a poet and wrote some 30 books and battled with alcohol and drug addiction when she was older, and it's all about, her life growing up as a woman in the 20th century in Copenhagen. And I'm just really intrigued by these. I think it would be interesting to read about a woman's experience of that time period in a different country other than the UK or the US, which is what I'm familiar with in literature. And yeah, I've heard really good things about them, so I'm looking forward to reading them. I then was sent a book by an author who I have heard amazing things about, and that is of course Leigh Bardugo. This is Leigh Bardugo's newest book, Ninth House, and it's her first adult book. So I've never read anything by Leigh Bardugo, but everybody seems to love her young adult books, and I've kind of always toyed with picking them up at some point. So when Gallant offered me a review copy of her first adult book, of course I had to jump at the chance, although I don't really know what it's even about. It says, for nearly 200 years, 8 secret societies of Yale University have operated from the shadows, serving the interests of the elite and shaping the course of history. The Ninth House is tasked with policing them until the murder of a young woman throws this carefully hidden world of privilege, power and a cult into chaos. So to me this one sounds almost like it's going to be a magical secret history, which I am so here for. It's meant to be super dark, and like I said, everyone just seems to love Leigh Bardugo's writing, so I'm here for this. I like books that have a collegiate setting, I like books that play with the occult, and I like books that are written by authors that everybody loves, so there we go. Then last but certainly not least for this haul is Into the Crooked Palace by Alexandra Christo, from the author of To Kill a Kingdom. Again, this one was sent to me by review by Hotkey, and I haven't read Alexandra Christo before, but I've heard really good things of To Kill a Kingdom, her other book. So of course I was intrigued by this. It's a young adult fantasy novel, and the blurb tells me that magic rules the city of Crige, and Tavia Sin knows just how many tricks she needs up her sleeve to survive. Selling dark magic on the streets for her kingpin, she keeps clear of other crooks, counting the day until her debt is paid, and she can flee her criminal life. So like a magical Oliver, by the sounds of it. But then one day, with her freedom in sight, Tavia uncovers a sinister plot that threatens to destroy the realms that she calls home. Desperate to put an end to her kingpin's plan, Tavia forms an unlikely alliance with 3 crooks even more deadly than her. Great. Love it. Love an underdog. Love like kind of like seedy underbelly to a city and crime and mystery with magic. Here for all of that. But those are all the books that I have purchased or been sent for review recently. So excited for all of these. I feel like I just have such an excellent choice of things to pick from all of these books, and such a like mixture. So let me know if you've read any of them or are interested in reading any of them, and which ones you think I should pick up the soonest that I haven't already read. I will of course link any relevant stuff I've mentioned in the description box down below. And thanks again to Skillshare for sponsoring this video and continuing to support the content I make for this channel. It's truly greatly appreciated, and until next time, happy reading, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye guys!